Hello, Professor. Welcome to the FMS Final Review. Today, we're going to highlight some of the biggest changes that we saw. We're not going to see the entire second FMS, but only the movements that really changed. So let's start off. Clinical history, all the same as the original video. Multiple injuries, ankle, stuff like that. Luckily, there was no new injuries that occurred during this time, so we don't have to account for anything else. Current and past movement history, all the past movement history is the exact same. Very active. Currently, I'm no longer a delivery driver, so that is new. I just work security, which requires a lot more sitting than I'm used to, which I did have to take into account. Still a powerlifter. In fact, I have a powerlifting competition on December 18th, so I had to navigate the exercises that I chose very carefully. That way, the strength programming that I get from my coach and my programming would not interfere with each other. So it was interesting trying to navigate that. The original FMS findings, I had tight calves, tight hamstrings, poor hip mobility, shoulder mobility issues, and contralateral mobility issues. And the goal was to create a mobility plan to address those, a warm-up plan to help mitigate further discrepancies, and then a stability plan for the core. These are the original exercises that we chose. We're supposed to do them on every workout day and before bed. Wanted to progress some of the movements. So instead of a assisted pause deep squat, we changed it to a goblet squat to help increase the difficulty of it. Instead of sitting there passively, you have to actively hold yourself up. The active hamstring stretch, we went to the single leg RDL with contralateral weight. Modified bird dog, switched to a weighted Palloff press in a squat position, and then the ankle mold progressed to the banded mobility ankle stretch. Some new stretches that we added was the banded pigeon stretch, banded mobility adductor and abductor drill, and the Bulgarian split squat with a band feeding the mistake to help increase that glute med activation. So we have some side by side, but we'll get to those after the original screen. I wanted to show some of the original movements that I picked. The first one is the thoracic spine mobility and latissimus dorsi stretch. So first is latissimus dorsi stretch. You keep that back rounded and you pull your butt away to try and stretch those lats. You can adjust the dowel position to increase or decrease the stretch. So you can progress and regress that. And we did, and just kept that the whole time. This is the thoracic spine mobility movement where you try to push your thoracic spine, you push your chest to the floor to increase its ability to move. It's a great movement. Next is the banded pigeon stretch. And the trick with this is to maintain your neutral spine position, stretch out those glutes. You can move right and left to adjust the stretch, but maintain that neutral spine. This is the banded mobility or adductor, abductor. And as you're doing it, you push your knee in and activate your glutes to push against your hand. So it's an active and passive movement to help stretch those glutes and also activate them. It's a great movement before a squat. It also helps break up hip impingement. This is the ankle mobility stretch that we progressed from the ankle mold. It's still an ankle mold. You're still pulsing back and forth, but it also adds a little bit more of a stretch. It also pulls the talus back. A lot of people have a sharp pain when they stretch their in their anterior ankle when they stretch their calves, and this can help prevent that, or at least mitigate, so you can get a better stretch. And this is what we did for that. And then we have the goblet squat instead of the paused assisted squat. And like I said, this requires you to maintain your position instead of holding on to something to maintain that position. So it's a little bit more active, and you can rotate back and forth to get a little bit more calf stretch and ankle mobility in there, which I did as well. And then you can see the sagittal plane here. You maintain that neutral spine. I think this is a great movement, and I was really happy that I was able to progress it the way I did. And then the RDL with contralateral weight, I think I did a great job maintaining proper form. As you can see, either if you drew a line, you could connect the heel to the back of the head and you would connect with all the big points. So I don't think I had any weird deviations in form there when I really focused. Had the contralateral weight to help increase that glute med strength because I have some knee issues, as you can see on that right side. Then a little bit of knee wobble. And this is the Palloff press in the squat to help train that core in all movements, and being a power lifter, maintaining core in that deep squat's imperative. So that's why I threw it in there as well. And then we'll get into the actual movement screen. So the first video is the black shirt. The new video is the white shirt, or the new FMS is the white shirt. And as you can see, there's a little difference here. I'm able to keep the dowel much more posterior than it originally. So you can already tell that my my shoulder mobility is increased. I also don't look as bowed forward. I look like I can maintain a little bit more of an upright position, just a little bit. So we're getting a little better. Still not a 3 though. Still not a 3. And then as you can see, I'm also able to squat a little deeper, especially on that first one. I can squat a little deeper right there. And then there's my back maintains that neutral spine, which is really good. Still not a 3 though. And then we do the progressed or the regressed movement with the elevated heels. And as you can see, there's no butt wink or hypolordosis of the lower back. As you can see on the right side, of my butt winks a little bit. My tibia and my torso angle are much more parallel than originally, and the dowel is much more over my foot than originally as well. It's hard to see in that right, but it's definitely more forward, way past the toes. On the left, the new movement, it's actually right on the toes. So I'd actually give myself a 2. I went from a 1 to a 2. And then we have the hurdle step. And I think I did a much better job. I had less compensations. I kept everything much more in line. As you can see in that left side right now, it's much more in line than it used to. Granted, these are opposite sides, but they're about the same on both sides, as opposed to the right, the original movement screen, where I had to really compensate to be able to get it where I wanted. And as you can see on both sides, it's just not nearly as compensated. I also don't round the back. You'll be able to see better in the stills. And then we have the active hamstring stretch or movement. And originally I couldn't even get my malleoli up to the stick, barely could get it up to the stick, but it was a lot of work. On the new one, I was able to get much more movement and even dorsiflect my toes a little bit. So I would give myself a 3. And as you can see on the third, I get farther and farther every time, and I pass it. So I'd give myself a 3 instead of a 2. I think I did a really good job loosening up my superficial hip flexors so they could function better, and also loosening up my hamstrings so my superficial hip flexors didn't have to work as hard. As you can see, way passes on that side. I wanted to show some actual benefit that I got from this on my actual powerlifting movements that my coach programs for me. I have a competition, so I need to peak. But here is around 600 pounds, and you can see there's a great knee valgus there, right? Those knees cave in. There's a 1 rep, and it looks like the foot collapses. Just not as optimal as that. And this was before the functional movement screen originally, and this was moving forward with some of the movements that I had programmed. And as you can see, there is still knee valgus, but it's not nearly as bad. So it's interesting to see how just a little bit of movement, extra movement, can really change, how much more efficient your body is. So as you can see in these side by sides, right, the frontal plane is kind of hard to see, but in this sagittal plane, you can really see how much more forward that dowel is. And that's clearly not ideal. On the right side, the new movement, it's much more of my toes. So improvements there. And then on the regress squat, you can see how much more upright I am. The dowel is much farther back. And then with the lines, you can see the tibia and torso are almost parallel, and that dowel is over foot. So I'd give myself a 2. And same thing with the hurdle step, much less compensation. My tibia doesn't have to AB duct to get over the dowel, or in this case, the tape measure. My back doesn't round as much as well, especially over here. You can see I'm much straighter. So my core stability definitely got a lot better. It's still a little lean in that dowel, so not perfect, but definitely improvements. And my lower back doesn't go into hypolordosis, which I was really happy to see prevent those lower back injuries. And then the inline step, they were about the same, but I think my positioning looks a lot better in the sagittal plane than original. I also don't look like I'm as far out to the side with my knee, as you can see there. It looks like it's tucked behind that forward heel just a little bit more. So definitely improvements there. And then as you can see here, I wanted to show this off because my shoulder mobility increased quite a bit. I was able to get them 2 to 3 inches closer, and it became a 2 instead of a 3 on, or instead of a 1 on this one. And this side, it got even close. It was a 3. I was able to get it within one hand length, which I was really happy about. So all in all, I think it was a great learning experience, and we made a lot of progress just in the simple movements that I programmed. Thank you so much.